It's exactly 2 months short of 2 years since the Tata Group took over Air India.
So after 67 years, this is a homecoming for Air India. We're proud to welcome Air India back into the Tata family after all these years. That's what N. Chandrasekaran wrote to Air India employees today. He promised a golden age for the airline that was nationalized in 1953.
In the last 2 years, the aviation to automobile conglomerate has put in a lot of effort in turning the airline around. It has placed a historic order for 470 Airbus and Boeing planes, the first of which joins the Air India fleet in December. It has also put in place a multi-billion-dollar 5-year transformation plan for the airline to resolve its deep-rooted legacy problems and become a new, globally competent airline product. It's a mammoth task, and there are many challenges.
After a drunken passenger was caught urinating on a co-passenger on a flight from New York to New Delhi, has been sent another show cause notice, this time for a flight between Paris and Delhi.
एविएशन रेगुलेटर डीजीसीए ने कुछ खामियों को लेकर एयर इंडिया के फ्लाइट सेफ्टी चीफ को 1 महीने के लिए सस्पेंड कर दिया है.
The aviation regulator, the DGCA, has slapped a fine of 10 lakhs on airline Air India.
Meanwhile, the rest of the industry too is changing. The Wadia Group's airline Go First is in bankruptcy court and struggling to find an investor. SpiceJet too is financially struggling and reportedly looking for a white knight. Akasa, the newest kid in the block, holds promise, but only if it doesn't trip over its own expansion plans and continues to be supported by its owners in its formative years. On the other hand, Indigo earlier this year ordered 500 more planes. Always a textbook low-cost carrier, it now plans to introduce business class to take on Air India's planned premium product. In fact, with the Tata Group's airlines and market leader Indigo controlling 91% of the country's domestic passenger traffic, India's airline industry is fast veering towards a duopoly. Steering Air India through all this is Campbell Wilson. Wilson is former CEO of Singaporean carrier Scoot, and he took over the reins of Air India in June 2022. In an interview to us last November, this is what he said.
We just need to keep saying that this is not a T20. This is a test match. It's going to take not 5 days, 5 years. It is going to require lots of ones and twos and patience and tenacity, and the occasional 4 and the 6 will be hit. But really getting to that century is going to be a lot of ones and twos and accumulation and just doing that foundation.
So late last week, I caught up with Wilson once again to hear from him where Air India stands now. Its latest challenges, its new product plans, its aims to set up a large training center for crew and pilots, and how it plans to use tech and AI. I also asked Wilson why there have been so few successful Indian airline CEOs, and also how he sees the duopolistic situation that the industry is fast approaching. Listen on. It's the 28th of November. I'm your host Anirban Chaudhary, and this is the Morning Brief. Hi, Mr. Wilson. A very warm welcome to the Morning Brief. It's so good to have you here.
Great to be here, Naban. Thank you.
Let's start with Vihan, which is Air India's 5-year transformation project. So the first phase was Taxi, which I think was focused on resolving legacy issues. And I think we are 6 months into the next phase, which is called Takeoff, which is focused on developing platforms, processes, systems, and building a product of excellence.
That's correct.
So tell me, where is Air India right now, and how do, say, the next 100 days look like to an Air India customer?
So you recall that we had a 5-year roadmap called Vihan, which had 3 phases. The first being the taxi phase, which was until March of 2023, where we were really triaging and trying to address all of the accumulated issues of the past. This current phase, which you rightly note that we're halfway through, is where we're building all of the platforms and capabilities to support very aggressive growth. That includes obviously the 470 aircraft that we announced earlier this year, putting a lot of IT platforms in place. We've also launched the new brand of Air India, which will manifest across the network very soon. And we've started taking delivery at a very rapid rate of new aircraft. At the moment, we are now taking an aircraft on average every 6 days, and will continue to do so for about the next 18 months. So very, very busy time. Over the next 100 days, we see the first A350 come into Indian skies in the new brand colors. We see new website and new app. Many, many things that are really going to reveal all the work that's been happening behind the scenes over the last 18 months.
Talking of the Airbus 350s, which is of course one of the wide-bodied aircraft that you're getting for the international network, now that we are so close to delivery in December, what can you share with us about the new product? What can passengers expect?
Well, I think we'll leave the onboard product to be a surprise. We'll reveal that at the time when we have a physical aircraft that we can show everyone. But look, the excitement around the aircraft is fantastic. 25 million people followed the flight live when we took it from Singapore to Toulouse after it was painted and before it goes into some interior work, which just indicates the huge interest there is in the airline transformation and the brand transformation in the new aircraft. But maybe without revealing details of the product, I think it is just another step forward for us. We're taking 11 777s this year, of which we already have 7 with latest generation lie flat business class, fully enclosed cabins, premium economy proposition. And the 350s will be a continuation of this. And by the time that all 6 are in place in March, about 1/4 of our wide body fleet will essentially be sporting latest generation product. Then in July, August of next year, we put all the legacy aircraft through a retrofit program, which will take about 18 months, so that by the end of 2025, all of our aircraft have been upgraded to the latest standards of seats and entertainment and other amenities.
Okay. But some legacy issues remain, right? In fact, let's talk about efficiency and on-time performance of flights, which we call OTP. So from a high level of 91% in April, which would mean 91 of every 100 flights were on time at India's 4 busiest airports, which is a metric that actually put you among the top 3 timeliest airlines in the country, Air India fell to the low 70s and has been among the bottom 3 in the last few months. That and several other issues, some of which have also been in the news, have made sure that customer perception of Air India still isn't, where it should be perhaps. So can we still say that Air India is in takeoff mode? And will these hiccups bleed into the new story of new aircraft and new systems that is expected to take the airline to new heights?
Every airline suffers flight delays occasionally and flight cancellation due to weather or technical reasons. And the challenge is how well we cope with that. Clearly, in some cases, we haven't coped as well as we could have and should. And these are learning experiences that we have to take to improve our policies and processes. But I think it also needs to be kept in mind where we're coming from. This is an airline that had very little investment in technology, people, processes, aircraft, modernization of keeping aircraft current, indeed, with not just seats and other attributes, but also the componentry on the aircraft. And so we've had to spend a huge amount of money to bring things up to a contemporary standard, let alone a world-class one. And so it takes time. It's unrealistic to expect that you can snap your fingers and do it overnight. It's a multifaceted problem. And so we're working hard at it. I think we're making good progress. We're certainly not at the end of the journey. In fact, we'll never be at the end of the journey because the bar will keep getting higher. But we're committed to be world-class, and I'm super confident we'll get there, and we'll get there in a reasonable amount of time. It will take time.
So do you think customer perception and safety are challenges that Air India will continue to grapple with for some time? Also, do you want to talk about any specific initiatives and investments related to safety that Air India will be undertaking in the short term?
Well, safety is as much a system and a culture as it is investments. We've brought people in from some of the best carriers in the world to bring in an external perspective to complement the local one, to make sure that we are on par or better than the international expectation. We're deployed many new policies with clear guidelines as well as consequences. We're taking a firmer rule on how we handle certain things, whether it be the way we handle people who might be disruptive, to the practices that our crew must follow when they're operating aircraft. It's a multifaceted issue, and every single area that we can lift and bring to a higher standard, we're doing so. With respect to customer service, talked about the number of aircraft that we've already brought in with improved seats and in-flight entertainment. There's certainly been a concerted effort to upgrade our catering across the network, internationally and domestically, and that is being recognised. Air India has been recognised by Condé Nast Traveller as in the top 15 airlines in the world, first time it's ever made the list. And we continue to get credit for making improvements. Is it to where we ultimately aspire to be? Not yet, but we're getting there. We're getting better every day.
Now let's talk about the mammoth task of building one airline entity. How is the integration with Vistara going? Also, whenever such an integration is on and before it's complete, isn't there always fear of one business cannibalizing the other? How do you handle that?
Until and unless we get clearance from all of the competition authorities, we can't coordinate schedules or pricing or any other commercially sensitive things. So we'll be as if we are any other set of competitors. Once we get the competition clearance, then the path to share information becomes open. And then we can avoid such cannibalization, and indeed, more importantly, we can improve coordination so that ultimately there's a better schedule spread, for example, there's better sharing of loyalty benefits and other things which accrues to the customer's benefit. That's a work in progress. We have competition clearance from all of the countries we require except one. Then we have to go through the process of legal merger. And then, of course, we are left with two air operating certificate holding airlines. And the process of bringing those two entities together is one that will take some time. If you look internationally where airlines have merged, it can be 12 to 36 months. And that process is governed in part by aligning all of the operating procedures and parameters, merging pilots, cabin crew, aircraft registrations and the like. And then the final thing to consider is when we bring the two brands together, and that will be determined in large part by how Air India's evolution is, the induction of new aircraft and upgradation of product, so that when the two companies do merge into a single brand, it is seamless from the customer perspective that the quality of the new Air India is at least the quality of the Vistara product.
Right. Now let's talk about financials just a bit, Mr. Wilson. Air India's net losses grew to 11,000 crore rupees in FY23. This is of course a given, as the airline is making a lot of investments in new assets and infrastructure and talent. We must allow it the gestation period that is standard for making money in this industry. But you've also been talking about concerted efforts in mitigating the airline's daily operating losses. Where is that at right now?
Well, I think we're making progress. Everything that we do is with two objectives in mind. One is to become more efficient and reduce cost, which is a lot of the systems and processes that we're putting in place. The new aircraft, which will operate more efficiently, particularly with respect to fuel, but also in the context of emissions. And then on the revenue side, most of what we're doing is to improve revenues, whether it is expanding distribution into new markets. Previously, Air India, for example, didn't distribute seats through one of the largest distribution systems in North America, which is a critical market. It didn't have a product that was credible to the commercial international traveler because the reputation or the punctuality wasn't there. Again, we're investing in those. Better relations with travel agents, not just in India, but overseas. Better revenue management so that we can increase the average airfare whilst we continue to offer competitive airfares at the lower end of the range. So, look, again, there's many things that it takes to run a successful airline. And most of the world-class airlines have had decades to refine this. Air India has had 18 months coming out of a period of public ownership. And so we're hard at it. We're hard at it across the board. and we are making good progress. We will certainly achieve success in due course, but this is a test match, not a ODI or a T20.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a point you've made in your previous interview as well. I wanted to ask you a little bit about leveraging the group strengths. So we have TCS that is building a lot of the tech backend for the airline. Tata Technologies, which had a recent IPO, is doing a lot of work on its fleet. Can you give me some more details on these and maybe some other examples? Also, I wanted to know, how is Air India using and leveraging on tech and AI?
Well, to your first question on how leveraging the Tata Group strengths is coming along, we work with many Tata enterprises. You mentioned Technologies, who are doing some work for us in digitizing certain seat components so we can get spares manufactured, amongst other things. TCS, clearly, Tata Communications, Tata Elxsi is helping us with a lot of design work. IHCL and Taj, clearly a lot of hotel cooperation for our crew. Taj Sats for catering. The list is very broad of the interfaces that we have with other parts of the Tata Group. But also, we are a commercial business, as they are, and we put our business up for competitive bid, but it's not exclusive. Sorry, your second question was
About AI.
AI. Yes. So we recently launched a generative AI-powered chatbot. I think it's quite transformative in terms of the way it addresses customers' questions. I think it's going to become an increasingly used tool, and I think what Air India has done is really quite path-breaking. But it's not the only use of generative AI. We are one of the few companies in India and indeed the world that is using Microsoft's Copilot embedded into our enterprise suite. We use it every day in all of our tools. And there's many teams across the business hard at work thinking about how we can bring it into our daily business life, not just an individual using it, but using it behind the scenes to improve such things as revenue management, for example. And so I do think it's going to be quite transformative. It's not the only thing that will drive the future, because our business still is very people-centric, but it's going to be a very important contributor to the future of Air India, and indeed I think business generally.
Coming to training, which is a big aspect as you bring in so many aircraft and would need pilots to man those aircraft, and we all know about the shortage of commanders in this industry. You are investing heavily in a training center for pilots and crew, and there are also talks of incoming investments from aerospace majors like L3Harris and Airbus in that facility. Would you like to throw some light on that?
I think Air India has always taken the responsibility of training its staff very seriously. With our huge expansion, where we're taking an aircraft every 6 days, the number of pilots and cabin crew and engineers and ground staff that we will require to support this fleet is significant. And so, yes, we have invested in a very sizable training facility in Gurgaon. We are partnering with a couple of OEMs to set up simulator training centers. We are talking to a number of OEMs, Airbus, Boeing, L3Harris, and we'll be talking a little bit more detail about that probably early next year, when we hopefully will be inducting the first group of cabin crew in January. And so it's a responsibility, as I say, that we take very seriously, investing a lot of money in it. One thing we know for sure is that this industry requires a lot of good trained people, and India has a lot of good people that just need to be trained.
Mr. Wilson, I'd like to talk a little bit about leadership here. So Air India has appointed Klaus Gersh as its Chief Operating Officer. He's of course a veteran, formerly with British Airways and with Air Canada. It's also brought in Chura Singh, who's former Ryanair, to look at integrated operations control, which is, a function which you mentioned a while back. Rod Butcher has come in as a consultant. You, of course, are leading the airline, and you've previously led Scoot to great heights. Having said that, there are so few, in fact, only probably 1 or 2 Indian airline CEOs or CXOs who've actually steered their companies to become great success stories. Why do you think that is? What is lacking? Is the Indian airline industry not evolved enough to have indigenous successful leaders so that they have to depend on expat talent? Do you think that there is still need to groom Indian top management talent in airlines?
If you look at the context, we had one airline in India, or two if you include Air India Express, that was a government-owned enterprise. And so it didn't have the private sector practices that people would have been exposed to outside of the country in private sector airlines. You had a lot of relatively small airlines that were operating, which again doesn't give people the exposure and experience of running a larger enterprise. So in that context, it's not really so surprising that the talent pool of people that were experienced running large private sector airlines was relatively small. That will change. We've now got two airlines at least, and who knows in the future, maybe more will come, where you've got well-funded, professionally operated, private sector, increasingly large airlines that are able to give people the exposure and the experience of operating in such an environment. And to the extent that we can promote from within, we absolutely want to do so. And as Air India sort of rebuilds itself and builds its pipeline and inducts people at all levels in the organization, the long-term intent is to increasingly be self-fulfilling when it comes to talent.
Finally, how do you react to the thought that the Indian airline industry is veering towards a duopoly between Indigo and Air India? Of course, given the ominous news that we receive on a daily basis about the survival even of the other airlines, except a few examples, of course. And how do you react to the fact that such a duopoly may not be good news for customers?
Well, I think, one, there isn't a duopoly at the moment, and two, I think if you look at other similar markets around the world, they also went through a period where they had a large number of relatively small, undercapitalized airlines, and that's not indicative of a healthy or sustainable aviation market. Now we are in a situation where you have at least two well-capitalized, professionally operated, profit-motivated enterprises that will, I believe, bring some stability to the market, bring some profitability to the market, and can bring investment and growth to the market. When there's a stable market that's professionally operating with a profit pool, other competitors will see an opportunity to come in. And that's what you've seen in the places like Europe and North America, where they went through a phase of consolidation, but then they've mushroomed into a very healthy aviation ecosystem where there are multiple players serving different levels of the market and providing the customer a range of choices for what they want. India has been grossly underserved internationally by Indian airlines. The fact that India as a country before the privatization of Air India had less than 50 wide-body aircraft for a country of 1.3 billion people, where some very much smaller countries in our neighborhood had multiples of that number of aircraft. Indian Airlines' ability to connect Indian cities with the major cities of the world was woefully below what the market was demanding. So I think look at things in a broader context and perhaps over a longer period of time. I think this is a necessary and important transition to what is a much better future for Indian aviation and India more generally.
Mr. Campbell Wilson, thank you so much for your time and your brilliant insights, and all the best to you and Air India.
Thank you very much, Annaman. My pleasure.
Legend has it that in the 1940s, people in Geneva could set their watches by the time the Air India flights flew over the city. Later, and in another part of the world, before Singapore Airlines was launched in 1972, Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, is said to have asked his team to study Air India, among other airlines. That was Air India's golden age, to which the Tatas want to restore the airline once again. But that age ended in the 90s, and what the Tatas and Campbell Wilson found when they took over in 2022 were 20 years worth of accumulated problems. As Wilson keeps saying, 2 years is too short a time frame to resolve and remove all of them. In a nutshell, an airline is as good as its metal and how well it flies it. To that extent, a large part of Air India's solutions are close at hand. New efficient aircraft, new product, new contracts, new crew. But how it charts that flight path depends on other things too. tremendous amounts of dedication, planning, concerted efforts, good industry headwinds, and of course, support from its parent, the Tata Group. On many of these fronts also, things are positive. After COVID, the aviation industry is finally looking at a sustainable boom. New airports are being built, existing ones are being expanded. The Tata Group is pushing its airline product with all its might, intent, and the vast support of its other businesses. And competition, at least in terms of the number of strong players, is lower than it has been in years. How Air India builds on these opportunities, whether Indigo keeps building its empire or falters in its hybrid premium carrier ambitions, and most importantly, what the concentration of flying power in primarily two entities means for the Indian air passenger is an episode for another day. Thank you for listening. Do share, like, and subscribe if you liked this episode. It was produced by Vinay Joshi and sound designed by Amrit Redji. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on all prominent listening platforms. Keep listening and fly safe. This is your host Anirban Chaudhary signing off. Have a good week. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.